Hey everyone, in this video I'll be building a to-do list app in Django, and the reason why I'm building a to-do list app is because it's a really good way to demonstrate some of the patterns that go into typical web apps. So from this video you should apply it to future web apps that you build on your own. So before you get started watching this video, there are a couple of things that you may want to look at. One is the demo for this app that I'm building in the video. You can go to the description below and get a link to that. You can also get the code for this video just in case you want to see it or follow along in some parts. And you can also get the Django cheat sheet that I've created. So all three of those things will have links in the description below, and you can get them before you watch the video or after you're done. So with that said, I hope you enjoy this video.
Okay, so the first thing we want to do, of course, is start a new project. So I'll use Django admin, start project, and then I'll call this my project. And of course, I'll create an app inside of it called my, or just to do. Let's not use my to do. And then what I'll do is I will add this to Sublime and go in the folder here. So just to start with the settings, what I want to do is I want to first create a new app. So Python manage.py. Oh, I need to cd into the directory first. So I call this my project. So Python manage.py and then start app. I'm going to call this to do. It's going to create an app called to do, and I will simply add that to my installed apps. So to do. Next thing I want to do is I want to migrate the existing models. So manage.py, migrate. And by the way, I'll be using the SQLite database just to save a little time. And then what I want to do is I want to create the super user. So Python manage.py and then create super user. And I'll fill in the information here. Okay, so now let me start up the server and let me just make sure I can actually log in as a super user. So admin, Anthony, and then my password. Okay, so I can log into the admin part, so everything is all good there. So now what I want to do, and the first thing that I want to do for my to-do list app is I want to convert this template here to Django. So of course the first thing I need to do is actually move the files over. And as you can see, this is what the to-do list app will look like. So I have a directory open here. And by the way, you'll be able to get the starting code with the complete code for this video. So if you want to go through the entire process yourself, you can. So for the files for the template, I have this index and I have this BS folder with the bootstrap stuff and then a styles. So I'll move all that over. So I'll go to do here and I'm going to create a directory called templates, of course. And inside of templates, I'll create a new directory called to do. And I will move index over into to do. Next, what I'll do is I'll create a static directory and I'll call the inner folder to do as well. And I'm going to move the static files over. So styles goes over and then I'll copy everything in BS over. And of course, BS stands for bootstrap, not something else. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to actually see that index and then I'll add the static files in the template so we can have it styled as well. So the first thing I need to do for this is I will go to the views file and I will create an index view. So the function will just simply be called index. The parameter will be called request. And I'm simply going to return render. Needs to pass the request, the name of the template, so todo/index.html. And then I'll have context later, but no context for right now. You know what? Let's just start it. So context is going to be an empty dictionary, but I will fill that in with things later. Okay, so that's the index. And of course, I need to set up the URLs. So first thing I'll do is I will set up the URLs for the entire project. So I need to import include from Django URLs. And then I'll have my to-do list app be on the index. So I'll leave a blank there, meaning just the index. And then I'll include todo.urls. So that should be it for this URLs file. Now I need to go to the URLs file in my to-do list app, and I need to actually create it. So new file. This is going to be urls.py. And it's actually easier if I just copy this and then edit out what I don't need. So I copy the code from the project URLs file, and I'll remove the things I don't need. So I don't need admin, and I don't need include anymore. And I can remove this first one here. And then once again, I'll keep this on the index. And then I'm going to import from, or let's just say, from period import views, so I can get all of them because I will have multiple views. And what I want to do is simply run, views.index, and I'll give this the name index. So everything looks good here. So I should be able to start up my server, and I need to restart because it failed because there's no todos.url. I just saved before I actually created it. So now my server is running. If I go to the index here, I see the template is here, but of course it's pretty ugly looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the the template, and I'm going to add in the static stuff. So there's some stuff here that I don't need. So let me just remove that so it's a little easier to see. I don't need the jQuery at the bottom either, but everything else in the middle I do need. So what I want to do here is I want to reference the style sheets that I'm using. I have 2, and the directories are kind of filled out, but not all the way. So what I need to do first is load static at the top of the template. So %load static, and that will allow me to access the static files that I have. So what I'll do is I will say static, and then I'll pass in the path, and then I can close out static there. Okay, so this path is almost complete. I just need to remove the period and add to do before it, because remember I have a to do in that directory. And pretty much the same thing here. So static, and then this will be to do, and I'll close this out. So it's really important here that you have the quotes for the path for the files here, and then of course they're going to be inside of the double quotes for the HTML. So that can be a little confusing sometimes, but just make sure you pay attention to the quotes and you'll be able to get it. So if you were to remove all of the dynamic stuff, you should be left with just the double quotes, and then when you add it, the single quotes should be in here. Okay, so now that I have that, let's take a look and see if my app looks a little better. And it does. So now I know that I have the styles working correctly, and I can go ahead and close this one out because I'm not going to use it anymore. So now that I have this, I can start doing things to my app. So the first thing that I like to do with any app after I have the templates loaded is I like to create the model. And the reason why is because the model is like the part of the app that is always going to be there. So even if you don't see it, it's still there. So it needs to exist first in my mind. So what I'll do is I will go to the models file here, and I'll create a very simple model. And for a to-do list, the model is going to be very straightforward. So I'll create a class called to-do, and it inherits from models.model. And it's going to have 2 fields in it. It's going to have a text field to represent the actual text of the to-do. So in the case of the examples here, the text would be either create my new awesome website, attend weekly coding session, or visit the gym. Those are the texts. So I'll just call this text. You can call it whatever you want, but text is clear enough to me. I'll make this a car field, and I'll give it a max length of, let's say, 40. I don't know how much space I can add in here before it overfills, but 40 seems reasonable. I won't be adding really long to-dos anyway. So you can modify that if you want, and you can find out exactly how much space is good there. And then I'm also going to have a complete field, meaning the to-do is actually complete. So this is going to be a Boolean field, meaning it can be either true or false. And I'm going to default it to false, because once I add a to-do, it shouldn't be complete right after I add it. So if I just put the default as false here, it will automatically get set as false in the database. And then I'll simply return the text as a representation of a to-do. So self.text. And that is going to be it for the models file. It's actually pretty simple. So now that I have the to-do model, what I want to do is I want to add it to the admin. So I'm going to first import the model. So from .models import to-do, and I'm going to register this model on the admin. So admin.site.register, and I need to pass in that model that I've created. So now that I have that, I should be able to see it in the admin dashboard. So let's go back to that. And I see it here, to-dos. So what I'm going to do is, and the reason why this failed, I got a little ahead of myself, is because I didn't actually migrate it. So that's really important, of course, because if you don't migrate, then the stuff never ends up in your database. So Python manage.py make migrations. This will create the migrations file for the to-do, which Django will then run when I call this Python manage.py and then migrate. Okay, so now if I try refreshing this, hopefully it will work. Oh, I need to restart the server again. So Python manage.py run server. Okay, so now it works. So because I migrated, it's actually in my database and I can start adding things to the database. So to start off, I'm going to add some items to the database to help us out when we're actually building the app. I really like adding data to the database as soon as possible because it just makes it so much easier to display that data from the database. Like instead of using dummy values, you can start using values from the database right away. So I'm going to add some items here. So to-do 1, to-do 2, and to-do 3. I'll mark this one as complete. To-do 4, and I'll add one more to-do 5, and I'll mark that one as complete as well. So I have these 5 to-dos that I have in the database, and I can now move on to actually trying to view them here. So I'll go back to the index, and you see I have the list of to-dos here. 2 of them have not been completed and 1 has. So you can see the difference in the style here. So what I'll do is I will open up the index file and find where those are. So we see there is a list group here and there are 3 list items. So this is what I'm going to be modifying to draw from the database. So to do that, I will go back to my views. And in my views, what I want to do is I want to query for all the objects that I have in the database that represent a to-do. And I'm going to add them to the context, and then I'll be able to access them in the template. So to do that, first thing I need to do is I need to actually import the model. So from .models, I'm going to import to-do. And then inside of the index, what I'll do is I will create a variable. Let's call this to-do list. And I'm going to just query for all the objects in the database that are a to-do. So to-do.objects, and I'm going to order by the ID. So they're going to be in order that I added them since the ID is sequential. And then I'll just add this to the context. So to-do list is going to be the actual to-do list that is returned here. Yeah, a little bit of space there. And what happens here is the context with the to-do list will get passed to the template. And then inside the template, I will have access to that list. And because it's a list, what I want to do is I want to loop. So I'll add the loop inside of the unordered list tag, but above the existing list items, because I want to see if I can get them into the HTML. So what I'll do is I'm going to loop over the to-do list. So I'll just say for to-do in to-do list, and that name matches exactly what's in my context. I'm going to in for. And then inside of this list here, I'm going to try to create a list item. So I can just simply copy this one and paste it. And really the part that just needs to change is this part, create my new awesome website. So that's a placeholder to-do. If I want the actual to-do that I have in my database, I will reference it directly. So to-do, so the to-do is an individual to-do from the to-do list dot text, because text is what I used in the model. So if this works, when I refresh this, I should see the other 5 to-do items that I added appear above because I placed them above in the HTML. So I just ran it and I see to-do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. They're above the placeholder ones. So now what I want to do is I want to have one style for the uncompleted to-do items, and I want to have another style for the completed ones. So we see here how a 10 weekly coding session looks a little different, and that's because it is complete. So what I want to do is I'm going to add an if statement to determine if it is complete, and if it is, then it will be crossed out, or it will use the style to cross it out. And if it isn't, then I'll turn this into a link so I can actually cross it out. So the way it's going to work is if you click on the actual to-do text, it's going to mark it as complete. So in here, what I'm going to do is first I'll indent this a little bit. Whoops. I'll indent. And I'm going to add an if statement. And as you can imagine, this if statement is going to be checking the completeness of the item. So if to-do.complete, so remember complete is from my model and complete is a Boolean, so I can simply say if to-do complete. So if to-do complete, that means that it is complete, and then the only other option is it's not complete. So I'll end if here, and I actually want to take this and add it down here because that is what the actual uncompleted one looks like. But like I said, I want to have it as a link, so I'll simply add an anchor tag around it. And then for the one that is complete, I simply have to add this style here. So a 10 weekly coding session is the one that is complete, and it's simply different by having this class to do completed. So I'll add the class here, and if I refresh, hopefully we'll see the ones that I mark complete in the admin dashboard as being complete here. Okay, so I see to-do 3 is complete, to-do 4 has a link, to-do 5 is complete. So 1, 2, and 4 are all links. They don't go anywhere yet because I haven't specified that part yet. And then to-do 3 and to-do 5 are completed, and they don't have links because there's nothing else I can do with them. So now that I have this part working, I can remove the placeholders. And then I have the actual items that I want. So now that I have that, the next thing I want to do is I want to work on being able to, let's say, add a to-do item. So to add a to-do item, what I'll first have to do is I'll have to create a form, and the form is going to replace this input here. So I'm going to create a new file called forms. So forms.py, and this is going to hold my to-do form. And the to-do form is going to be very simple. So from Django, import forms, and I'm going to create a class called to-do form. It's going to inherit from forms.form, and it's going to have one field in it. So it's going to be a text, and this text is going to represent this input here. So where it says enter to do, for example, delete junk files, that is what I'm trying to replace. I'm not going to replace the button. I'll leave that in the HTML. So to create this, it's going to kind of mirror the model that I have. So forms.car field max length is equal to 40. And then inside of my views, what I want to do is I want to create that form and pass it to the template. So if I just add it here, form, and of course I have to import it. So from .forms, import to-do form. So this form is simply going to be the to-do form instantiated. And of course I need to add that to the context so I have access to it in the template. So I'll just add another key value pair form, and it then gets passed to my template. So once inside the template, I can, first thing I'll do is I will add the cross-site request forgery token. So CSRF_token. So of course that needs to be inside the form. And then I'm going to add in the form itself here. So form.text. And let's see what it looks like. Okay, so I have this input field, but it's really ugly. It's not as good looking as this one. So what I want to do is I want to add the styles for that one. And to do that, I have to add a widget on the form to kind of match what I have. So if I go back to forms, I'm going to add a widget, and this is going to take up some space. So the widget I want is a text input widget, and I need to specify the attributes. So looking at the template again, you see the input that I have here has a bunch of extra attributes. So it has the form control class, it has a placeholder, it has an ARIA label and ARIA described by. I don't think those two are strictly necessary, but I'll add them anyway for demonstration purposes. So the first one I want to handle is the class. So inside a text input, I'm going to pass some attributes, so ATTRS, and I'm going to pass a dictionary with the pair of things that I want. So the key would be class or a placeholder or ARIA label or ARIA described by, and the value would be the actual value in here. So form control, enter to do, for example, delete junk files, to do, and add dash button. So the first one is class, and the class is going to be form control. The second one is going to be the placeholder, and I'm going to have to copy and paste this one. So the placeholder is this, enter to do, for example, junk files. So I'll copy that and I'll paste it there. The next one is going to be ARIA label and then to do. So ARIA dash label and then to do. And then finally, the last one is going to be ARIA described by. Yeah, so let me copy that one and put it in the key. And then the value will be add dash button. So add dash BTN. Okay, so that should be it. So now if I refresh my page, I see I now have two inputs that look exactly the same. Of course, they're not exactly the same because the one on the bottom is the one for the form. So it's going to have a different name. But other than that, they look the same. And that's what I'm going for. So if I remove the placeholder one, the input type text, and just leave the form text here, I see I have this one here. So now what I want to do is I want to actually test out this form to see if I can submit something from the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new view, and this view is going to take in the form data. So I'll call this view add to do. It's going to take in a request. And the first thing I need to do is instantiate the same form that I have up here. So form is going to be equal to do form. And with this one, I'm going to instantiate it with the data that is passed through the form. So to do that, I'm going to call request.post, and that is going to take all the post data that I have from the form because this is a post for the form, and it's going to instantiate the form with it. So whatever that text is, the text is going to be added to this to do form here. And then at some point, I'm going to redirect them back to the index. So this isn't a typical single page application in the sense that there are no refreshes. I'll be refreshing to show how things change, but in a typical one, it will be some client-side process that changes how it looks, and you really wouldn't have to refresh the page. But since I'm not using any client-side stuff, I'm only using Django, I have to refresh, and by that, I'm just redirecting to the same page, which is the index. So I need to import redirect here. So once I have this, I'm going to print, let's see, request.post, and then the actual text. So if I just type text, that text comes from the form name, form field name, which is text. So if I type in something and hit add, what I'm looking to see is the actual text that I add in. But before I do that, I need to do one more thing. I need to add the URLs. So URL is going to be, let's call this add. So path add. It's going to be views.add to do, and the name I'll give this is simply add. And then inside the template for the action, I need to add the URL. So URL and then add. So now if I click this, and let me go to add to see what happens. It gives me an error because I'm trying to get on a route that should only be posted. So what I'll do for that is I'll import a decorator called require posts. So if I go back to views, I'm going to import from django.views.decorators.http, import require_post, and I'm going to add that decorator to my add to do function. So request post. And what this does is makes it to where this view only accepts post requests. So now if I try to go back to add again, I started that too soon. It's telling me it can't import request posts. I must have misspelled something. Yeah, not request posts, it's require posts. It's like the first 3 letters threw me off. Okay, so let's try that again. Run server. And I need to change it here. So require posts. And now it looks like it's running. So if I go to add, I get a blank page. And if I look in my console, I see method not allowed get. So that's what I want. And 405 simply means method not allowed. So if I go back to the index, now, like I said, what I want to do is I want to test this out. So here is a test to do. If I click add, it redirects me to the index because I have that redirect at the end. And let's see if I see the printed value, and I do. So here is a test to do. So I know my form is working. I know that my form is submitting the data that I want. So now what I want to do is I want to take that data and actually do something with it. And what I want to do is add it to the database. So I'll say if form is valid, so if it's complete and actually has the value that I want, I'm going to add a new to-do item. So I'll call this new to-do. I'll take the to-do model and I'll simply add text, and it's going to be this value here. So request.post text. And then new to-do dot save. And then what I want to do is I'll leave this redirect. And now that I have this, what should happen is whenever I add a to-do item to the form, I should immediately see it here, because what I'm doing is I'm creating the to-do, then I'm saving it to the database, and then I redirect to the index. And then when I get back to the index, it's going to query the database again and send those to-do items to the template so they can get rendered. So I think I need to refresh again because my server is acting funny. So a new to-do item. So if I click add, what I'm expecting to see is that to-do item get added here. And I see it here at the bottom. So everything there is working correctly. And one little thing that I may have forgotten, it's like I have another style overriding this. So let me quickly change styles.css. So what I want to say is for, let's see, where is it? For the list group item, the text is going to be black. So list group item, color, black. And if I change this to like red, I'll show you what I'm modifying here. So let me refresh. You see how it's all red? I want it to be black. And I just had an old style that was in there, and I just wanted to do that before I forgot. So I changed it to black so everything looks fine. So that was just a minor detour. Okay, so now that I can actually add items to the to-do list, the next thing I want to do is I want to be able to actually say I've completed a to-do item. So to do that is basically I click on this link and it will refresh the page, and when the page refreshes, that to-do item will be completed and crossed out, and it won't be a link anymore. So to do that, I need to create a new view, and I'll call this view complete to-do, and it can remain as the default, which is a GET request, because it's going to be a link. So for the complete to-do, in addition to having the request, I need the to-do ID that I'm actually completing. So I'll show you how to add the to-do ID in the URL in a moment. But assuming that I did have a to-do ID, what I'm going to do is I'm going to query the database for that particular to-do. So to-do.objects.get, and then primary key is to-do ID. And then I'm going to update it by simply saying todo.complete equals true. So when it's true, that means that the item has been completed. And then after updating, I have to save it so it commits to the database. And of course, I'm going to redirect the index after all this is done. So it's a pretty simple view, but as you can see, everything that I need to take place happens within these 3 lines. I get the object, I update it, and then I save it. So now I'll add a new URL, and that URL is going to be, let's call this complete, and it's going to take in a variable todo ID. So that name has to be exactly the same as what I have in the view here. So I have todo ID. Then I'll reference it by saying views.complete. That's what I named it, right? Complete todo. And I'll give it a name. I'll just call this complete. And now that I have the URL, I can add it into my template. So I'm going to modify this anchor here. I'm changing this hash to be the actual URL. So URL complete. And then you pass in the actual variable that you want immediately after. So in this particular case, I want todo.id. And then I can close out the URL part. So if I refresh my app and look, you might not be able to see it in the lower left-hand corner, but I definitely see the complete parts. So if I click the link for 1, I'm expecting that when the page refreshes, it will be crossed out. Clicked it, and now it is crossed out. So that part is done. So now what I want to do is I want to work on these 2 buttons. So I have 2 buttons here. I have a delete completed and I have a delete all. So the names are pretty self-explanatory. Delete completed will delete only the ones that are crossed off, and delete all will delete everything. So let's work on delete complete first. So this is going to take another view. Delete completed, we'll call that. It's going to take in the requests, of course. And then what I need to do is I need to search the database for all the to-dos that are complete. And to do that, one way is todo objects filter. I'm looking for the complete column. The exact value is going to be true. And that is going to return all of the to-dos that are complete. And I simply call the delete method on here, and that removes them from the database. And I'll return the user to the index. So this is really simple. I'll then add it to the URLs. So path, and I'll call this delete complete. It's going to be views.delete completed, and the name I'll say delete complete. Okay, so now that I have that, I can add it inside of my template, of course. So I'll find where the delete completed is, and I'll add a link around it. So that's going to be the link, and then I'll close it out. And then I'll reference the URL. So the URL is going to be delete complete, right? It's not completed. Yeah, so delete complete. And that means whenever I click that button, it's going to call the delete complete view, and it's going to delete them from the database. So I'll refresh this. And looking in the lower left-hand corner, I see the link is there. So when I hit this link or this button, I expect that to-do 1, to-do 3, and to-do 5 all disappear. And they do. So now I'm only left with the uncompleted ones. And if I click to-do 4, for instance, it gets marked as complete, and then I can click delete completed again, and it will get removed if I wanted to. So now the last thing I want to do for this to-do app is work on this button. And as you can imagine, it's going to be almost the same as the delete completed, but instead of searching for where it's complete, it's just simply going to delete everything. So I'll call this delete add, this view delete add, and I'm going to once again query to-do. And instead of the filter, I'll just say all, and then I'll delete everything. And I'll return to the index. So now I'll go to the URLs, and I'll add in, let's call this delete all as the URL. Views, delete all, and then the name is going to be delete all. Okay, so not delete add, delete all. Okay, so all that looks good. And now I'll do the same thing in the template. I will add a link around here. And then I will add in URL and then delete all, and I'll close it out. Refresh. And I see the link in the lower left-hand corner. So when I click this, I expect everything to disappear. And it does. So since there's nothing in the loop or the list anymore, the loop does nothing, and I just get blank space down here. And of course, I can start adding in new to-do items. So another to-do item, add finish to-do app video, add, and I'll mark that as complete, and post video to YouTube. I'll add, and I'll leave it there because I haven't posted this to YouTube yet. So that's pretty much it for the to-do app. As you can see, I have this pretty nice looking app that works pretty well, and it didn't take that much code. You know, the most important part is the views.py file. That's where all the magic happens. And it's only 41 lines of code. I have these 4 or 5 views that cover all the functionality of this to-do list app. So pretty cool stuff. And as you can see in Django, you can get things done really quickly. So that's it for the To-Do app. If you have any questions about this app or anything else that I did in the video, you can always leave a question down below and I'll answer it. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, please hit subscribe and then hit the little notification bell next to it so you can get updated whenever I post a new video. So that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you next time.